They're coming in as we speak. All righty, so same thing as usual. It's almost 4 o'clock here. This is going to be recorded and it will be broadcast live. So if anybody has any issues, just be warned that that's what's going on. And Calvin, how are you today?
I am well. How are you?
Doing very good. It's good to see your face.
Yeah, I hear that there's pretty bad weather coming your way.
Like we were talking about, it was about 50 degrees at about 11 o'clock, and then now it's snowing.
It sounds like Michigan. We get all 4 seasons in one day, usually in 1 hour.
The joke here is if you don't like the weather, just look at your watch and wait 10 minutes. It'll Fun stuff. Well, welcome. This is the Locksmith Live meeting. This is the every week meeting. And I just want to make sure that everybody is welcome here. And I want to welcome Kelvin Heath from LSA. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about your organization, your association, what you do for them, and what that association can offer the members.
Well, LSA has been around for over 30 years. They've been in Michigan. We're Michigan based, but since the Zoom meetings, we're starting to get a little bit more national reach. I'm the newly appointed president as of January of this year. One of the main things I'm trying to do is kind of like you're doing, Wayne, is try to unite the locksmiths together, also carpenters and door guys and other people that are interested in our industry. Because what I'm finding is that many times we get a call for a door lock and it's usually a door issue. And that's usually what the problem is. But yeah, so we're all about education. And that's our main focus, educating the locksmith community.
Right. That's great. That's great to hear. I'm glad to hear that is your mission as well. Because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of work to do this. And a lot of people don't see all the stuff behind the scenes that, a president of an association or even being on the board or anything like that. A lot of times people don't actually see what's going on behind the scenes with all that. And there's a lot of work. Trust me. You're probably well aware of that at this time. So what else does LSA stand for? Like I know John Hubel was the past president. What's your vision for LSA for the next year or however long you plan to remain president?
So normally it's a 2-year term. One of my main visions is to educate the locksmith community, because many times what happens is that we may have a job in our local area, but it may be someone outside of our area that we can reach out to. For example, in Michigan, there's a lot of cities like other states, and maybe it's someone in Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor is quite a few ways from where I live. And so I would reach out in my association and say, hey, who's in Ann Arbor? And I would refer them to that job and try to, connect them with that job. But that's one of the main things I think the local association does is get to know each other, and we know what our work standards are, and we're able to reach out and say, hey, John or Billy or whoever it is can do this job because he's the safe expert or he's the door expert. And that kind of helps. So I'm really about trying to support the local locksmith, also the national locksmith, because sometimes I get calls outside of Michigan and I'm saying, okay, well, Wayne's in Colorado, connect with Wayne Winton. He can help you out.
Yeah, and that does happen a lot, especially with national service providers. I don't know how much we all work for those companies. Some people do it, some people don't. Some people do it begrudgingly or with a credit card up front. We could have a whole meeting on how to deal with NSPs. We probably will one of these days. But it really seems like there's a really good opportunity where, hey, I may not be able to be the person to help you with this, but I sure do know somebody that can, and then you can at least give them a reference to where they can start traveling down that rabbit hole. And even they may not know somebody, but they know a guy that knows something about it more than we do, So that's That's a great way to definitely pass it on. Also, other people that you don't like, maybe if you don't specialize in one particular thing, maybe if you don't specialize in safe and vault work, and you get a bank that says they need their vault preventative maintenance, or maybe some work or something done on it, or an ATM open, you would at least be able to pass that on to somebody that you know, and that first person that's going to go to would be one of the people of the association, correct?
Yes. And one of the things that I do a lot of work for real estate investors, and they're a whole different group depending on who you're dealing with. Sometimes you're dealing with a company, sometimes you're dealing with a maintenance company, sometimes you're dealing with the local guy. And many times I come across people that are in different industries. So, for example, I may go to a house that needs carpet. So I may meet a carpet guy. Or I go to a house that may need some glass. So I meet a glass guy. So there's always customers that call me and say, hey, do you know anybody that does windows? And
Yep.
it was really strange because I was at one job and I was installing the doors with my son, and this guy was installing the windows. And he saw how we were pretty much doing a very good job in installing the doors. So he started referring us to a lot of his door jobs, and we referred to a lot of the window jobs. So we were able to support each other in that aspect. And that's really what my vision is, to try to bring all of us together and support each other, and to make sure that if I can't do a job, I can refer somebody who I've seen their work, or I can refer them, because I usually don't refer people unless I've seen their work, unless I know them pretty well. I just don't refer people off the cuff. It's like, if I've seen your work, I know you do a good job, and I can refer you, and I feel pretty confident.
Right. I've had that happen too, where maybe you did refer somebody to somebody you didn't know that well, and then they kind of didn't do that good of a job. That customer is going to think the same of them as they're going to think of you. You're one and the
Yes.
same. You might as well work for the same company. So that is definitely going to leave a sour taste in somebody's mouth if that happens. And I definitely try to not do that. No recommendation. If I recommend it and it's a dud, then it's going to be my fault. Versus if they just go find somebody, point and click on the magic Google page, maybe it's a scammer, maybe it's a real, we don't know. You don't know until you get a hold of somebody on the phone. But that really just, that kind of brings me to another point where it's how you answer the phone and how you interact with the customer. I can usually tell another reputable service provider just by how I get treated on the phone, or if they're on the job site. A welcoming handshake. Are they clean? Do they have booties on? If they're in a real nice house, what other things do we have that that would follow that? And I accidentally muted you, so hit your space bar. Somebody else came into the thing. Sorry, Kelvin. But that professionalism, how you do everything, how you do anything is how you do everything, in my opinion. And I really like to see, a clean service truck, no mismatched doors, just something that says professionalism, a uniform. And I can gather a lot of information about that person and the integrity that they have and the quality of work that they're going to perform just by how they present themselves, how they carry themselves, how they interact, and how they show up on that job site. Because how they show up on that job site is how they're going to show up for your customer as well.
Yes, and I think that's so important, especially with first-time customers, because the first impression is everything. And many times if you show up with a dirty van, or you don't have your stuff together, they're already making opinions about you. And then if you take too long on the job, especially with like picking, people think in terms of picking, they're thinking, oh, he should be in there within a minute. They watch all these movies and not understanding that sometimes the combinations are different. Sometimes the locks are different. Sometimes the door's not installed correctly, where it's upside down. So you have all these scenarios. But one of the things I think that was very important for me to do was to put a sign on my truck. I think once it cost me, I think, because I had to get my card and get the logo and have the company draw the drawing on the truck. And instantly when I did that, I started getting calls out the window. I mean, I was getting calls from everywhere. And then I had my uniform, had the logo on there and everything. And then I did a couple of interviews through the Locksmith Ledger, started getting word around. And once people saw that truck, and we keep our trucks clean, I advocate to my son, don't drive up there with a dirty truck, and keep your uniforms clean. And those
Yeah.
kind of things really make a difference, because when you charge what you charge, they understand, oh, he's investing in this business. He's upped his game.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the customer can feel that, you get Joe Handyman with a magnet that's, kind of crooked and sideways stuck to the side of a, Honda Fit that shows up. They're not going to demand that's the 1999 price tag right there. The guy shows up and he's in a t-shirt, and all this other stuff. That's the 1999 price tag right there. And you're probably going to spend $600 because you're going to get scammed afterwards. But if you can show up, and I mention this all the time, we kind of touched it on the last meeting too. Like, if you show up, think about how you show up to a domestic violence situation.
Yeah.
Some guy shows up sloppy, just, doesn't look the part, doesn't fit, smoking a cigarette, looks like he just got dragged out of a bar somewhere. And shows up to this place, and this lady who may have very well just been a victim of this domestic violence or mental violence, whatever it is, she's in a very, very bad position and very vulnerable. And now that's what's going to show up. Do you think that's going to escalate the anxiety of that situation or start calming it back down? Whereas the second person shows up, they're in a lettered vehicle. It matches what they saw on the truck on the website. And these are all skills that I'm kind of giving away some of my social media class here for people that are listening. Having that same van or a similar one show up that's actually on Facebook or on Google or on your webpage is an automatic de-escalation. Like, she's red alert, things are crazy right now. That's going to start checking off boxes. All right, look, professional van, nice looking, well kept, get out, well taken care of, uniform, name on shirt, company logo on shirt. All of these things are going to equal a much better interaction and start de-escalating, and you'll start building some rapport and start building some trust with that person, as opposed to making it worse and possibly even getting told to leave. I've had that happen where I've had a customer and she's like, I did not feel comfortable with the other person who showed up. I asked them to leave and I called you to come out here. You ever had any stories like that, or do you have any experiences that you could share?
Yeah. So I had a situation. It was in Detroit, over near 7 Mile and Van Dyke. For those that know the city, know this area that's pretty much prevalent with drugs, and there's a lot of drug activity, a lot of crime activity goes on there. And I was called later at night. I don't do 24-hour calls anymore. I've been doing this for 30 years. And after about 20 years, I said, no more 24-hour stuff. It's just a little too dangerous. And so I was at a call, and all of a sudden, this guy just kind of walks up near the door and he says, what are you doing changing my locks? I'm like, well, this lady right here, she's the owner. She changed. He says, no, I'm the owner. So we got into a little bit of a argument. And at that time, there were no cell phones. This was quite a few years ago. And so I basically kind of like got in panic mode. I'm like, what am I going to do now? I don't have a cell phone. So I ran to the payphone and called the police, and they showed up surprisingly within 4 minutes. And so they showed up, and the young lady was saying, oh, I didn't know he was out of jail and this and that. So apparently it was her husband that was in a domestic violence situation. I was changing the locks late at night, and the police showed up. They arrested the guy, and I finished changing the locks. But one thing I learned from that is to ask questions when people call you late at night. You got to ask a lot of questions. You have to know what you're walking into.
Right.
And that kind of leads me also to the area of when you're dealing with vacant houses.
Mm-hmm.
We get a lot of calls from a company. Well, the source is called the Land Bank, which takes a lot of the vacant properties in the city of Detroit, and it basically sells it to investors. And many times you may have a squatter in there, someone that is illegally there, and you have to learn how to deal with that situation. So I ask neighbors. I have a checklist. The first thing I do is ask the neighbors, has anyone been in this house over the last 24 hours? Then I investigate. I look around the house. Are there any broken windows?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to really be careful about those situations, because between the evictions and the vacant houses, you have to really be very careful. And I carry a gun. I mean, I'm not afraid to use it, but I want to go home alive, and I'm not trying to kill anybody, but I also want to make sure that I'm safe. But I also have a lot of police friends, a lot of sheriffs, a lot of deputies. And I call them in a minute. Hey, I'm going over this house. It's vacant. It's in a sketchy neighborhood, but I want to make sure that you guys know I'm there. So they'll send a squad car a lot of times. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But
Yeah.
whatever the situation, I have a checklist. I go in and I say, okay, let me make sure I talk to some of the neighbors, interact with the neighbors, figure out what's going on in the neighborhood, look around. Are there any broken windows, any broken glass? I'll tell you this quick story before you go to the next question. So my son and I, we were at a house. It was a historical house in the city, and huge house, 6 bedrooms. I mean, a mansion of a house, probably 5,000 square feet easily. So I'm
Mhm.
walking through the house and I'm looking at every door, trying to make sure nobody's in this house, talking to the neighbors. And all of a sudden, my son and I were installing doors, and this guy just walks from the attic out of the house.
Wow.
And my son and I were looking at each other saying, "Did you see that?" and immediately the day after, we both took our CCW classes. We got our guns. We said we're gonna be ready for the next. But fortunately, the guy looked like he was so strung out and so high, he just walked out of the house, and we didn't even know he was there because we didn't check the attic. We checked every single room in the house. Actually, I think we did check the attic, but it looked like it was locked, so we didn't really bother. Like, nobody's gonna be in the attic. We checked every single door in the house, and there was a lot of doors. But I say that to say we really have to be careful when you're going into these vacant houses or these evictions or anywhere where the house has just been standing there for a while, because you never know what's in there, especially the large homes.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I've had my fair share of those too. We've got a lot of family in law enforcement, and it's really common to have to go do evictions. You don't know what you're running into. A lot of times we do them with sheriff standby, and
Yes.
or with police escort standby. If you've never if you've never had the wonderful experience of needing a bulletproof vest to actually pick the lock, that's a new fun one for those adventurous people out there. Yeah, it's happened. And if you say you carry, I carry too, and that's everybody's individual choice. I'm sure that's a pretty hot topic and hot button issue at this point in time. But everything's all legitimate. That still doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, you can still carry, and a lot of the more you take programs and actually educate yourself and take first person shooter or classes on that to actually do it at night, do it in the home, run tests and things with it, you find out all of a sudden it doesn't mean anything. It means that you have a plan B, and it means that you are prepared, but it also doesn't help you if somebody jumps out of the shadows. One of the exercises we have is sandbags. Like, one guy will be 20 feet away, and just to show you how fast somebody could come at you, an attacker with a weapon, and they drop that sandbag when they hit you, meaning they got you. And it is insane. Maybe 30% of the time that you could actually draw a weapon and actually get a shot off before that person actually gets to you. So, I hope people out there all kind of really take that into consideration. Just because you have self-defense or a means to defend yourself doesn't mean that that's going to work out in every situation. Doing the layers, letting somebody know where you go, that's an excellent thing to mention, and I do it as well. I'll usually shoot my team members a message, hey, going into a sketchy house, or we'll bring 2 of us, buddy up, and we'll clear the house. That's the first thing that I'll do, is we'll go clear the house and then start working on it. I've been in houses where, of course, they didn't tell us, but there was human feces smeared on the wall, meth houses. I quit doing all that stuff. I just don't have time for it anymore. We'll let that go somewhere else. But those are situations that, hey, when I needed that $100 or $150 to rekey that house, I needed it. That was part of it back then. And there's other people that are coming up that I want to make sure they have those things in place, so they don't run into a situation where there's a guy in an attic and you're not prepared and you don't have all those other things checked on your checkbox list like that. It can definitely be scary. Also, not to mention, you'll hear about it in California mostly, that they'll call locksmiths out, especially safe technicians or automotive locksmiths, to steal their van. And Rob was talking about that. Rob from Popalock was talking about making sure your vehicle's lettered with cameras all the way around, not just a dash cam. If you only have a dash cam, parking, so that when you get out, you're on video, and whatever happens, that's going to be, there'll be a pattern there. They'll be able to pull that footage off of there and see what's going on. Having 360-degree cameras is also a really good idea. And then announce, just like your signage on your vehicle, this vehicle's under GPS tracking and monitored under video surveillance 24/7, the end. And those things can kind of help reduce some of that. It really depends on where you live too. We're in a pretty safe area here, but some areas are not. So.
And you're right, Wayne. A lot of times I don't take a lot of those jobs anymore. These were a lot of past experience I was talking about, but some of the guys are newer on this Zoom meeting, and I just want them to be aware. Even in some of the safest areas, you have to be very alert, and that's the main thing. Just be alert, because you never know who's in the house or who's looming or who's watching you. I never forget one time. This was quite a few years ago. There was another vacant house, and we were called on it. And there was, right when we opened the door, there was a hole in the floor. Now, I guess they call these trap houses. I don't know what they call them, but basically it's a situation where if it's a drug house and the police are barricading the door or ramming the door open, there's a hole in the floor and it goes right to the basement.
So they fall in.
Yes, you fall in and you hit the concrete basement floor. So I tell anybody, when you're picking open these locks, don't just walk in the house. Look down, look around, because you just never know. And this could be anywhere. I've seen houses in the ritziest areas in the city, in the state, that have drug houses that nobody even knew was there. Right. And I'm like, okay, let me look down before I open this door and walk in, because you can very well fall straight to the basement. So I just tell people, no matter where you are, and sometimes we take it for granted that it's safe, and it may not be, it may be, but just be aware of your surroundings and be very alert on some of these jobs, because some of these jobs are basically a setup. And you have to be aware that, and kind of like, I've seen this movie before, it doesn't sound right. And when you start asking people questions, they get irritated by it. Sometimes you just have to walk away from some of these jobs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where I think, like you said, sharing that experience of what am my interview starts on the phone call. Who am I dealing with? How are they answering my questions? When I tell them, I need you to send me a picture of your photo ID now, and they start balking at that. Why do you need a picture of my ID? Because we're going to open your car and I need to prove who you are. If you want me to come out, you'll send the photo ID, or this conversation is already over before it even started. I get them right on track. Like, if you're going to argue with me, I'm not in the mood. Like, you send me what I asked for. I asked for it for a reason. I'm not here to steal your identity. We'll delete the photos after we're done if that's what you want. But I need to know that I'm dealing with a legitimate person, and addresses need to start lining up. And a lot of things really need to start lining up before we'll even consider going on that call. And it definitely happens. So what is your checklist? Like, when I pick up the phone and that call's coming out, make, model, color of vehicle, address, I'm listening for slurring. If it's near a bar or a restaurant, spidey senses starts tingling towards, maybe are they intoxicated? What part of town is it in? And then ask for a photo ID. I ask for a picture of the car too, to make sure that they're legitimate, that it's right there. That's going to help you not get set up. If they're calling and saying, hey, I need you to come get into our red Honda, and they can't produce a picture of a red Honda with that license plate number, I'm not going out. What do you ask?
Well, my number one question is this your vehicle? Because many times you get, especially with, and I don't mean to shy the females, but a lot of times it's their husband or their boyfriend, and they're calling for them, and they know nothing about the car. Like, you get these calls that say, I need a key for a car. Well, what type of car is it? Well, I don't really know. Well, I can't help you. I need to know make, model, year. And then you have to ask the questions, is the car running? Is the battery charged up? It's just certain questions. If you don't get a good response or a legitimate response, a lot of times I'm like, you know what? Call me back when you get that information. And like you said, the technology has made it so much easier for us now. Because back in the day, I mean, you didn't have the GPS. You didn't have where you could send a photo. It was more or less like you were kind of, going in the dark, basically. And what I ask a lot of times is, how did you find out about our company? And that's
Yep.
usually the last question, because I want to know, is it a referral? Did you just pick me out of the phone book? Was it under Find a Locksmith? I'm just trying to get an idea of who they are and where they call from. And that gives me a pretty good idea. Because I had a customer, he called me from it was a situation where it was a vacant donut shop that had actually went out of business. And the first thing I asked him, are you the owner? And if you are, I need to see some ID, because I didn't want to open up this vacant donut shop and he wasn't the owner. He didn't legitimately be able to go in there, but I was able to pick the lock open and change the keys. And he showed all this ID, and he was actually one of the sons of the owner, because the owner had passed away. But you get some of the strangest calls sometimes, and you just want to know, is this person legitimately the person that's supposed to make this decision? And
Yep.
that's, you just have to double check and document everything.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times, I feel bad for the locksmiths, because so many people have that employee mindset where they're like, I have to go help this customer. And they get almost indebted to them when no exchange has happened yet. And they feel bad because they're not able to produce that service. And what I'd like to kind of change that to is, no, you haven't committed to anything yet. You need to get all of the information first, and then you can commit to whether or not you choose to engage with this customer or not. Because I can walk away. I can say, I don't feel comfortable helping you. I have that right. And everybody here in this room has that right of refusal. You don't have to go out. And I'm not saying, discriminate people for any reason whatsoever. You can choose what jobs you want to take based on your safety and your integrity and your standards for your company. That's what I'm talking about, the kind of work that it is and the situation that it's going to be involved with. I have no problem telling a customer, I don't like the way that this is adding up, and I'm just going to refer you. Here's a couple of referrals. One of these guys will be happy to take care of you.
Yeah. And one of the things we as locksmiths, we get into, especially when things are slow, we tend to grab for jobs that we really shouldn't grab for. And we tend to be almost to a point where we feel desperate. We feel like, I've got to help this person. But I always say, be concerned, but don't be consumed. Don't make their problem your problem.
Yep.
You want to help them, but if it's going to hurt you and you just feel uncomfortable and you feel like, okay, I've seen this movie before, this is probably not going to turn out right. And then you get disgusted with yourself and you're mad, and you go home and you're talking to the wife and she really doesn't want to hear it. It's more or less like, I told you not to take that job, because, after you've been in this business for so long, you've seen these scenarios before. And it's like, you know what? I know things are slow, but they'll pick up. I don't need to take this job because it's going to consume me, or it's going to get to a point where I'm going to be frustrated. Or, I have customers, it doesn't happen very often, but let's say it's a lockout and they'll call you, they'll say, I'm locked out of my house. Okay. Is it residential, commercial? They give you basic questions. And based on the area they tell me, I kind of know what the locks are. I know this city like the back of my hand in a lot of places I know. And so they'll call you and they'll say, you'll give them a price. They'll say, well, can you do it for less than that? Less than what? And then it's like, well, such and such had it for this price. Well, why do you call them? I mean, it's unfortunate. We have to be very blunt with some customers because they'll play these games. And I went on one house where I opened the door up and I gave her a price. And she said, well, I'm a senior citizen. I said, okay, I'll give you a senior discount. And I had already quoted high because, like I said, I've seen this movie before. So I'm playing a game of quoting high and getting to where I need to get to. And then it's unfortunate, but certain cultures like to negotiate. I'll just put it like that, to be politically correct. And many times you have to quote high to get where you need to be at. But to make a long story short, when I got there, the lady had less than what I had quoted. And so honestly, I was ready to walk off this job, but she was a senior citizen and she was like, well, this is all I have. I said, ma'am, I already gave you the senior discount. And I was just trying. And then I found out that I guess it was her granddaughter, one of my older customers. And I saw the connection. So I went ahead and did it for a lesser price. Fortunately, I had the lead sheet and it took me about 30 seconds to get her in. So it wasn't a loss. I didn't get what I really wanted, but I quoted high enough where I made some money off of it. But I try not to do that because customers will try to work you. And it's like, okay, I'm just wasting my time here. Because there have been some jobs where I actually walked off. I'm like, okay, you don't have the money. I've quoted you this price. I gave you the discount. I'm out of here. And then you have those situations where And I used to hate this with car lockouts, is that you have 2 or 3 locksmiths trying to open up a car and you're there with them and you're like, wait a minute, you just call 6 other guys. And so those days are kind of few and far between, because I don't get that many car lockouts anyway, but that's a
Right.
whole nother scenario.
Yeah, well, I think at one of the meetings I told you the situation, I ran into the same thing. I get it over, I pick up the phone. Yes, you have a real person. Okay, here's yes, we can do that. Thank you. I'm going to send you a text message. Text me your name, contact info, everything that we need. Now we got a paper trail, right? They can't just say, oh, I didn't know I was talking to you, because I've showed up. There's the Tojo, there's the police department, there's 2 locksmiths, and everybody's in their van trying to fill out paperwork and they're looking around. I get out of my car. I go right up to the lady and I said, ma'am, would you like me to open your car? She's like, well, there's a lot of people here. I'm going to check prices. And I said, well, you can check the prices all you want, but I've got this handy dandy text message. And you knew she was going to pull. She even tried. Well, I just called so many people, I don't know who I was talking to. And I said, that's great, except for I have this text message with your phone number and name and contact information and photo ID that proves who you are, that says that you are going to pay me no matter what. That means whether we open the vehicle or not, when we dispatched, you committed to payment. So I was like, would you like me to open your car, or would you like to pay me and let somebody else open your car? And she said, just open the car. And so the Mojo's, he's throwing his receipts, because now they see tools are coming out. And one of the other locksmiths come over and we start having a race. And I'm like, well, I'm already paid anyway. I don't really care. So I kind of play with it. And I'm like, all right, well, we got ourselves a race now. And he's all getting into it. And of course, I get mine open and I, tell her this. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the bill. Here's your thing. And everybody went home empty handed. I went home paid. There's a reason I went home paid, because I showed up prepared. If you show up prepared, you can leave that situation. Now, obviously, if it gets extremely heated, if there's going to be violence involved, if it's going to be, a crazy situation, no amount of money is going to be worth doing that. But, it just goes to show that the prepared person will get paid and they will leave that day, and everybody else goes home empty handed, and everybody else burned fuel to get there. And I feel bad for them, but they didn't have the same techniques that I had, and they had to go home and learn that lesson the hard way with their tail between their legs.
Yes, very true. Very true.
All right. We're about halfway through here. So what I want to do is let's do a little screen share, and we're going to check out LSA. So tell us a little bit about the website here. I can navigate to a couple different highlight places, but just let us know, what does LSA do for the members? What value do you add? And why would somebody want to be a part of your association?
So there's a lot that we offer. I think the main thing, because I'm looking at the website here with you also, we have a lot of information that the locksmith can hit these different links, and it shows about education, the mission. It kind of gives us an idea. The thing I really like about LSA is that we support each other a lot. And it also has, if you look at it, it has a lot of information about technical manuals. I think that's the most important thing, the technical manuals.
Where's that at? Technical manuals right
if
here.
you scroll up,
Got
and
it.
it should be, let me make sure. Yeah, so it says A, like all the catalogs and different things like that. And John Hubel, you can jump in anytime you want. Being that I'm the new president, he knows a lot more about the website than I do. Those are a lot of the catalogs. Yeah. But John, you can jump in anytime you want to. But it really
well, you're doing a good job. I appreciate that, Calvin. The tech site is probably the most traveled site, because it's got anything and everything for every manufacturer out there. We like to be that library. And I think one of the newest ones, and I was going to encourage you, Calvin, to come up with the 12-point checklist for approaching a property. Under the letter F in the technical dictionaries is forms. And we're starting up at the very top. We're starting up a group of forms and surveys when you go to a door opening, as you're showing there.
Yes.
And these are constantly updated, as all they are is technical things. So if Calvin, if you would come up with your little 12-point sermon of how to approach a house, maybe we'll put a form up there as well, just as a checklist, because we oftentimes forget things. We are anxious to service a client and we forget about the preview show before we get there. But just finding depth and spaces, finding manufacturer details. We're not competitive to ClearStar, but we're trying to provide the same kinds of opportunities that ClearStar members would have. And eventually, this will be a go-to site for anybody that wants to. Plus, we have all the other information about the association itself, from its history to its mission to its resources. So
absolutely. No, that's great. And then you link to Aloha as well. What are the dues, and then what other special events do you have? Do you have another education training seminar coming up? I know we talked to who was it? It was the Missouri Kansas Locksmith Association. They've got safe training coming up from CABA. Do you guys have anything in the works yet for this year?
Yeah, what I want to do, because we're getting a lot of interest with automotive locksmithing. There's a couple of local people that kind of helped others start off in the automotive industry as far as tools they should have, information they should have, books they should have, websites, apps, those kind of things. So I'm in the process of working on getting not only a Zoom class, but also where they can physically go in and take that automotive class. The other one, of course, is, which is I call it my baby, is the residential doors. And I want to talk about that a little bit concerning resident. This is one of my articles. And for those that haven't read it, is basically talks about what are you holding on to that we all need. And I think that's a very good subject to talk about, because a lot of us have a lot of information that we end up dying with because we never shared it. And I think, Wayne, we talked about this earlier, is that many times the reason why our industry had been dying off on life support was because we haven't been sharing information with each other. Not so much, I'm not an advocate of sharing with people outside of our industry, but within our industry, to share and help one another. And that will make us all stronger, because what I think for lack of a better word, the scammers did and the people outside of the industry did, is that they saw a weakness and they kind of took advantage of it by having these national companies that really don't service local. They service locally, but they're a national company. And they saw that, they were unified and we were not. And, we became kind of territorial, kind of like the squirrels, once they get in, they don't want to get out, and we territorial, and this is our baby and we don't want to share it. But we live in an age now where if someone wants to find out something, believe me, they hit the right site or the right Google thing, they'll figure it out. Not to say it's always accurate, but they find a way to get the information.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to change. And you're on that bandwagon as well. I think all of us are working towards that. Like, instead of, everybody going to YouTube to trying to come up with a solution for the problem that we're trying to have from some guy who's just decided to take his door apart, and film it for somebody. This is not going to be the best education, is not going to be the best content. Might be resourceful, might help you out a little bit, but if we could come up with an internal way to share the information, to have the information sponsored, and to have it put out there so that the associations can distribute it through their members. That's exactly what I'm trying to work on right now. We're working with manufacturers, we're working with suppliers, we're working with all of the industry people. Let's have that income start trickling in. Let's build something with it, and then let's give it to the associations, and then the associations can give it to the people, and then the people are going to be familiar with that product or that service that was provided for them, that they were taught about, and they're then going to reinvest their dollars back into it. It is a full, complete circle and an internal grassroots ecosystem, and this is not that difficult. Almost all of the other industries have figured out how to do this. The locksmith industry is just always the last one to catch up, and if we have to be the ones to grab it by the bootstraps and do it, well, then fine, let's go ahead and do it. And we do that through these meetings. I want to have a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of education, and a little bit of maybe some business, just like we started talking about today. How can you plan? Everybody that's here already got some ideas about how to plan to not get burned on that next GOA or gone on arrival call. And it's us sticking together that helps that. And maybe we just save somebody. Maybe somebody watches this in a year or two from now, and they just hung their shingle and got their van lettered like you did so many years ago. And maybe you saved them from walking into that house where somebody jumped out of the attic with an axe,
Yes.
and really save somebody. You never know. So that's really the whole point behind this.
Yeah,
And
and one
speaking
of
of,
the other things too with when you look at the YouTube videos, and I'm not saying YouTube is bad or good. I'm just saying a lot of times they're not under pressure. They're not
right,
in the job. They're sitting at home drinking a coffee, talking to their friends. They're not looking at someone breathing behind their neck saying, when are you going to get this lock open? I got to be to work at 9 o'clock. So when you have those real life, like you do a lot of times, Wayne, you're showing a real life application. You're
yeah,
there on the job. The
yeah,
customer's breathing down your neck saying, hey, where you go get this lock done? I mean, they're not necessarily be saying that, but I'm just saying it's a real life application. It's not something that you thought of, that you sitting at home drinking coffee while you're doing a job. You're on the job. You're in the process. You got skin in the game. And
yeah.
that's what we need more. We need more real life application, real life skin in the game, real life. This is what happens when you're on the road on a job. And I tell people the best thing locksmiths could have is the ability to think, because many times you're not going to have the tool that's working. You may be out in somewhere in the boonies and your Wi-Fi is not working. What are you going to do now? Can you take this lock apart and figure it out? Or do you just walk away and say, well, my kids won't eat today? No, you got to figure it out.
That's
And
right.
that's one thing that I always say, you got to have plan A, B, C, and sometimes D. And that's where the prep work comes in. When you're doing these doors, these residential doors, you got to know the product. And it used to be where when we did, like, let's say a storm door, everything used to be assembled, where you just basically put it up, screw it in, and you're done. Now everything is knocked down, which means you've got to put this door together. So if you can prep it the day before, put it together, take all your measurements on the job, get everything you need, prep it, and you go on the job, you're in there in an hour, you're in and out. But if you don't have a chance to prep it and you're doing all this stuff on the job, it takes you longer. And I'm not advocating all locksmiths do door jobs, because it can be long, frustrating. It can be time consuming. But when things are slow, that's when you can take on different avenues of more income. And I always tell people, the more you learn, the more you're going to earn. I tell I got grown children, but they're grown now. I tell them, you got to be able to have more than one way of getting income. You have to be able to create a job if you don't have a job. And we as locksmiths, sometimes we walk away from things where if we were to come together and network, we can take on these jobs. I like the job you did, Wayne, with the school system, where you talked about how there were so many doors you had to do, and you collaborated. You had one guy drilling the holes, you were putting on the locks. You got it down to a science where you got it, where you actually was able to make money. I could have took you all day long if you tried to do it yourself. You were like, okay, I'm just going to walk away from this job. It's just too much. But sometimes we can take on those jobs. We all can make money.
Yeah, no, and that's just it. It's like anything, your first deadbolt that you install, it takes you 2 hours because you're trying to, make everything perfect, and the jig doesn't fit on right. You're doing all this different stuff. Now I've got it down to like 15 minutes, boom, 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 in, out. And it's just figuring out what combination of tools and the order or sequence of you doing your job, that perfect pair, and interchanging those things and being willing to interchange those building blocks allows you to come up with a better formula. The perfect formula is the one that unlocks the vault. You got all the numbers, you put them in the wrong sequence, doesn't open up. You got all the wrong numbers for your phone number, you put them in the wrong sequence, it doesn't add up. It doesn't call you. If you have all the raw ingredients and you add it up the wrong way, it's not going to work out. But once we figured out, all right, this takes this long, this takes this long, this takes this long. And the key to that whole project was pairing the task with the individual that had the personality that would work well with that task so they could go do it all day long, right? And you're not
Yes.
changing. You get somebody on something, hey, it's like an assembly line. I can do this one thing 500,000 times today, one right after another. I don't have to change my brain into, all right, now I'm installing the lock. Now I'm prepping the door. Now I'm taking one off. One person going through that cycle is going to move much slower than somebody who has one task, one thing, boom, 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 move on to the next one. And then we all catch up and help each other out at the end when there's loose ends. That's it.
Yeah, and I'm an advocate of tools too. If you get the right tools, it just makes your job so much easier. The right jig, the right
Yep.
drill, the right Dremel tool, the right, like I'll tell you one thing that really helped me out a lot is that the blue punch, the Schlage blue punch, when I was doing a lot of this IC core, I mean, that Schlage blue, I was just going through. I mean, it was just like, I'd have to pull out my key machine. I'd have to do anything. It's just certain tools that just made your job so much easier. And many times if we try to do it by hand, it's not always working out. But if you got the right tool, it's great to have. I mean, I'm a big advocate of getting the right tool will make your job a lot easier. I know when I was advocating about Leashy, when I first started talking about it, I think it was might have been on Locksmith Nation. The guy was like, why would I spend money on the Leashy and it's not going to pay for itself? I said, well, the Leashy's not. You can get them, the KW1, you can get them for $60. I said, you should be able to make that on your first call and then some. Now, if you're not making that, you're not charging enough. But that Leashy, for me, it was a game changer. I mean, I'm decent at lock picking, but the Leashy just made it that much quicker. So it's like certain tools, if it makes your job quicker and it pays for itself, it makes sense. Now, if you're going to buy something that's $12,000, it takes you 4 years to pay it off, you might want to rethink that. But it's just certain jobs that you have to look and say, is this a job I want to do? Is this, because back in the day, we as locksmiths, we tried to do everything. We were trying to do safes. We were trying to do, unless you got a team, it's kind of difficult. What I tell people, the older you get, you want to make the most amount of money in the least amount of time. So if you got jobs where you're doing rekeying all day and that's making you money, stick to rekeying all day. But if that's not it, hey, you got to figure out, I need cousin Bill to do safes. I need cousin Bobby. I'll tell you a good organization. And I'm not really advocating anyone in particular, but there's Fred's Key Shop. They have all their relatives work there and they all specialize in something. They got one guy, all he does is automotive alarms all day long. One guy does safes all day long. One guy does IC core. So their whole family does something and it lessens the burden on the rest of everybody else. So nobody's just not doing one job. So when you want to see IC core, hey, go see Gary or go see Bill or go see Brian. They all have specialists. They've got it down to a science. And they pretty much have cornered the market in most of the downtown Detroit area. And I'm sure they're making millions. I've talked to Fred. He's been in business longer than I've been born. I was born in 1964. He started his business in 1963. And Wayne, I don't think you were even thought about then, but
nope,
that's another story. That's just a little history.
Oh yeah, no, this is great. And so this is the newsletter right here. Just so people know, this is what you're going to get. You guys put this out every month, right?
Yes, every month. Bill Link is our newsletter guy. He does an excellent job.
That's great. So we've got about 21, 22 people in the actual Zoom broadcast, and then 7 people watching on the live broadcast as well. And you have a really in-depth, there's a lot of information in here. I mean, there's some fun stuff, some word search, stuff like that. Here's that class through Missouri, Kansas Locksmith Association from Dormicaba. Did you say you had something planned for 2023 education-wise?
Nothing in the works right now, but we're just reaching. What my goal is as the president is to reach out to different organizations and try to find out who's the expert locally, and then try to get them to either do a Zoom class or something in person or both. And so I've been reaching out to a couple of, because what's happening, a lot of the younger guys, they really want to get into the automotive. And I know that's not everybody's pet peeve, but that's one of the class I want to have. And also the commercial door installation and also the glass door installation. I've been reaching out to different companies and some of them have been receptive. Some of them have not been. So John, he told me, says a lot of these companies, they're not going to be receptive because they've got their own territory. They don't want to help us. And I said, well, I get it. But somebody's going to want to help us because we're sincere about what we're doing, and we're not trying to take over anybody's business or take away anybody's business. We're trying to make them stronger because a lot of these companies, they're looking for people to do work, and we're experts in the door area as far as lock area. So they may be good at the doors, but I've seen some door installers that are terrible at the locks. I'm like, okay, they did a great job on the door, but the lock looks horrible, and it's not functioning, it's not working. The deadbolt's not retracting all the way, you know.
Well, it'd be like us trying to go out and install a refrigerator with a water line. Like no, it doesn't mix. Like, hey, and I've had people offer me that. They're like, hey, you're you're a strong guy. Can you move this fridge and hook up this water line? Absolutely not. No way. Not in a million years. I'm not accepting that liability. And that's,
Yes.
liability standpoint, but I don't want to do it anyways. Call somebody that does it and make sure that they know. I'll just go ahead and throw it out there. I think John has my entire class list. So we're going to get you your first education seminar for LSA right here, right now. I'm actually volunteering my services. I will put on any webinar that you want. You and John pick it. You pick a day, you pick a time. I will put it on. I will host it, and everybody is able to join, and it will be 100% donated on my end. If you guys need to charge through the association, do it for you. But that's what we can do for your members today. How does that sound?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, because we're all about education. That's one of the main things we push. Now, I don't know if there's any questions that anybody wants to ask me. I mean, I'm an open book. I've been doing this since 1993. So I don't know if there's questions by the group or anybody has questions for me. I mostly do a lot of door installations. I also do a lot of residential, do some commercial, some automotive. But the main thing, I do a lot of work for real estate investors. They call me, and then I do work for real estate companies. They call me all the time. Hey, I got this many houses I need rekeyed, or I got these doors I need to secure, that kind of thing. So.
Right. Well, let's do this. I'm going to work through a couple of things right here. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then right at the end, then we'll allow people to open up microphones or put questions in the question box, and we'll open up the floor for questions at that time. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds like a plan.
So let me ask you a question. How long and what does it take? What would you normally charge for, and what would it entail for you to go install an open locked indicator on a storefront aluminum door right now? Like the fire department called, they got their building inspection. The door guys just put the door in. It's a brand new building. Everything's working good. It's not old and janky. You're just going to go out there. All you got to do is put in a door open locked indicator.
Yeah, so basically I always start with the service charge. I call it operating charge. It's kind of my cost to do business. And that's usually starts off at $95. That's off the rip. To any minimum charge is $95. That's for me to walk in the door, to say hello to you, say hi to your kids, or whatever you want me to do. $95. And of course, it's the material, as far as the cost of material, and then whatever hourly charge you charge. I think we charge right now, we're up to about $85 an hour. So that kind of gives, and it usually doesn't take you that long to put it on there. So that kind of gives you an idea. I know everybody has different prices depending on their overhead and things like that, but that kind of gives you an idea.
Yeah, I'm not trying to pin you down to any hard number. Every job has its own quirks. About how long does that take?
Usually about an hour, maybe less.
To install open locked indicator?
It just really depends. I would say I think we probably got down to maybe 25 minutes or so. Yeah, just depending on what, because my thing is always, how is the door opening and closing? And if everything's opening and closing, if everything's open and closing good, then it shouldn't be that difficult of a job to do it.
Well, that's good. So what's your process? You follow the directions. Do you use the major jig? Do you cut it out and router it out, or do you use the two drill bit holes that come?
I normally use that major jig on that one. Yeah.
So you get the router, and then it's you got metal flying around everywhere.
Yeah.
You got to kind of secure the job site when you do that. Maybe some caution tape, keep people out of there, because you got a lot of things going on, and you have to clamp the jig on. You have to put the cutting fluid so that your bit doesn't jam up, right? You have to strip the door, right? You got to take the cylinders out. You got to take the Adams Right cylinder out, and the actual 4900 or the deadbolt. You got to take all that out, right?
Yes.
Check this out. I am going to change your entire view on how to install these, and you're going to be doing them in 5 to 10 minutes.
Wow. I thought a half an hour was good, but 5 to 10 minutes is even better.
Square hole drilling for an open locked indicator. All right, here we have it. We have these door must remain unlocked during business hours or while the building is occupied. Open locked indicator here. Hey, locked, just like so, and unlocked, just like so. Door shuts, and we are all set and ready to go. Alrighty, so we'll walk through this step by step. Here is the open locked indicator in the open position. You can see that there's a thumb turn on the inside, and when the lock is unlocked, the bolt is down and it says unlocked. Here we have it in the locked position. The bolt is extended and you can see that it is in the locked position. Here's the door as a blank canvas when we first came up to it. You'll notice that I have my drill, 18-volt drill, along with my Milwaukee pack-out system that is packed full of storefront parts, especially GKL products, bridges and screws and cover plates and all kinds of fun stuff that you need to service this. I have this whole entire kit pre-packaged with my hole saw. Now I install these a little bit different than most people do. The instructions have you drill two small holes in the holes, I believe, at 2 locations. I prefer to do it my way, which is with the hole saw, and it only requires 1 hole. The first thing that we're going to do is start taking the screws out of the cover plate. Then we're going to take a look at these measures. So this is what the directions would have you do here, is they'll have you measure these 2 holes out. And I still base all my measurements off of these 2 holes. We're just going to drill 1 hole instead of 2. Basically, what went through my mind is, why do I have to put, like that efficiency thing, like we were talking about earlier, how can we start chopping this up and shorten it? Why do I need a square hole instead of a round one? I have to have a square hole because I need the router to make a square hole. I can make a round hole with a hole saw in way less time and eliminate that very, very dirty tool from the equation. I mean, by the time you get the lubricant on there, it makes a mess. Just cleanup after trying to use that tool and that router is a nightmare. And it is locksmith glitter silver everywhere after the fact as well. Measurements. And what I do is I start off with the bottom hole measurement and the top hole measurement. And I determine that from the center of the housing, like so. You can see where the tape measure is, and then I'll go ahead and make a mark where that first screw needs to go, or that bottom screw needs to go. Then I'll go ahead and double check my measurements, just like so. And then I'll make sure that we have the correct back set in the next photo that makes sure we're sitting at 1 1/8. You can see my original dot was over just a little bit. All of this will be covered up by the open locked indicator. So now we're in the correct back set for it as well. Now I'll use the actual open locked indicator, set it right up on there to get my top hole, make sure that my math adds up to what the actual open locked indicator actually requires. Now that we have the top and bottom hole, it's time to measure the center hole, and we basically just take the difference between the top and bottom, figure out the middle, and go ahead and center punch the middle, making sure that, again, that back set is sitting at right at 1 1/8. Is if your holes tend to start wandering, it will make your install look crooked, and it will not look as professional, and it will not function as well either. Now that we have the center hole, I use a 1-inch metal bimetal hole saw. This bimetal hole saw will cut through the aluminum. The most important part of this installation is this right here, having some kind of backing plate that you slip in between the door and your drill bit. Okay, if you drill too far, you will drill into the locking mechanism, and there's a significant chance that you could ruin it. So here I have this stainless steel door wrap that I just have on the truck for this purpose, and you can see the drill bit went right into that as opposed to going into the lock housing or the lock mechanism. If you boogie up the track there, that pin won't slide very well, and it'll cause problems. So what I was showing there is the knife will cut off all of the loose ends and basically smooth that hole out so the plastic pieces do not get caught on anything. We then pre-drill the 2 mounting screw holes, and I use a regular HSS high-speed steel drill bit to do that. You could leave the protector in behind there, but you can also watch it as well. Now I'm using a number 8 by 32 thread drill tap. These are made by Milwaukee. And after I pre-drill the hole, I use this drill tap to go ahead and tap the threads for the mounting holes with this tool. And then you can see it right there, 8 by 32 thread configuration on this one. They have metric and standard SAE threads. I'll then go ahead and actually run the screw into the hole to make sure that it does fit and that it's completely threaded properly. Here are the 2 screws and the 2 little bars that are going to come in your open lock indicator kit. We will be using the smooth flat bar on this installation and the 2 installation screws for this particular install today. Here you can see the bar that slides up and down the deadbolt. This is in the unlocked position. Now you can see that it is in the locked position. You can see the amount of travel that that bar has, and you can see that the deadbolt is now extended. So we need to also look at the top of the door. One of the requirements that'll probably be made by the fire department or whoever requested this installation is to have the proper signage that says these doors are to remain unlocked while building is occupied. Some of them say business hours, some of them say different things, but that's the basic gist of it, is if this building is occupied, this door needs to be unlocked. Here we have the completed finished product. You can see it's in the open position. Now we have it in the locked position. You want to make sure that it actually says the locked position and the bolt is actually extended and that your indicator is centered both vertically and horizontally. Here is a picture of the entire door done with the signage up at the top and the open locked indicator at the bottom. Now I'm just showing a photo of the outside. Never mount an open locked indicator on the outside. You'll be causing major security flaws if you do so. Here's the cover plate back on. And now this job will be completed. And we'll take a look at the full installation along with the operation of the door now. Here we go. We're pointing out the signage and going through the motions of the open locked indicator. For more information, check out wayneslockshop.com and lock reference. Also, I'd like to note that you could add a keyed lock on the inside if that department requires it. All right,
That's
so
pretty amazing.
what do you think about that? Now, I want to throw in here, I did lead you on a little bit. I want to make sure that everybody knows I'm not throwing you under the bus. It took me over an hour the first time I installed one too. I got them down to about, 45 minutes, but with the router and everything and having power and making the area secure, it's an hour-long project. It took forever and it drove me nuts. And I'm like, all I have to do is drill 3 holes. Two of them are tapped and one of them needs to be about that big. How can I do this much faster? So that's when I came up with this particular idea. And I intentionally wanted to bring you down that road so that everybody could see this job normally takes a very seasoned, skilled locksmith or technician 30 to 45 minutes, and that's doing it quickly. What if we could take that and shave it down, not in half, but down to about 10 minutes?
That's pretty amazing. I'm impressed.
Well, good stuff. Good stuff. So I just want to show that. That would be our little education piece there for this particular meeting. I'm going to go through a few other things. Of course, we've got Wayne's Lock Shop. If anybody would like to sign up for that, go ahead and do so. We do a 7-day free trial. It's $9.99 a month, $99.99 a year, or we do offer the lifetime membership for $250 at special occasions. I'd also like to feature the Lock Caddy as one of the sponsors. Wes McKinney with Lock Caddy has amazing products. It was product of the year, Aloha 2021, I believe, and Locksmith Ledger, same year, same product, won both product of the year awards. If you don't have one of these, I highly recommend you grab it, especially if you do a bunch of IC or high security stuff. They have all these bands. It just makes everything really nice. Your shop could literally load up a set and send it out with the tech, and then they can bring it back with more cores and you could keep cycling this on. So we want to make sure we give a shout out to Lock Caddy, lockcaddy.com if you're interested in it. Banner Solutions definitely helps us out. Banner Solutions is a supply company. You can order your locksmith supplies and needs from them. You also saw Banner was a sponsor of the LSA newsletter, so there's sponsorship in there as well. And this is what it's taking. It's taking these sponsors to help recognize these kind of events like these Zoom meetings to be able to make them possible so that we can provide all this content and information for everybody here. That little 6-minute video took about 4.5 hours to capture the video, set it up, edit it, and put it in the presentation to where everybody can learn how to take a 45-minute project and turn it down into about 10 minutes. That all takes time and effort. Okay. And then lastly, of course, LSA, if anybody would like to join, it's lsamichigan.org, correct? All right, perfect. And with that, we'll go ahead and open up the floor for questions. If you have any questions for Kelvin, myself, general locksmithing questions, anything that we talked about today, or anything you would like to talk about in the future, I will open up the conversation and go ahead and unmute your microphones if you'd like to speak. Questions, comments, concerns? We did too good of a job, Kelvin. Nobody has any questions.
Yeah, I think we covered too much.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Seriously, anybody questions, comments, concerns?
Why don't you go through the chat box and see if there's anything I'm interested in there?
All right, let's see here. Meeting chat. Who's all right? Oh, let's see. Takes tools from the door. Leashy tools. Not worth $75. Well, you know, it is what it is. $95 operating charge, $85 an hour. Takes me half an hour. I charge 40. Parts are usually double. So it's just pricing stuff here. I mean, I'm a firm believer in stopping exchanging time for money. I like to exchange completed projects for money. You want this done? Like, that's how a building gets built. You want to build a house? Cool. What's your budget? Do they charge you by the hour, time of materials? No. You want this house? $2 million, $500,000 down, right? That's the deal. So I kind of like to run some of my bigger projects that way. Sometimes it doesn't fit into the formula, but a lockout is a completed service. That's $125, you know? Or if it's a weekend, it's a custom price. Great 5-minute installation. Never rush a job. Cylinder screw needed tightened. Okay. Great information.
Anyone can be on the LSA email blast if they choose to. You didn't cover that, Calvin, but nonetheless, it's there's a reminder that goes out to everybody to show up to the meeting, but it's there for a multi-purpose. It draws the attention to the newsletter as well as has any last minute thoughts in there. So anybody can be on that email blast just by sending an email to Calvin and tell him you want to be on it.
Absolutely. Everybody in this meeting, I would highly recommend you go to lsamichigan.org and at least fill out an application. Get on that newsletter. This is not a spammy newsletter that just, haunts you and it's a bunch of wiggly ads that just are obnoxious to deal with, like so many other email subscriptions out there. This is a technical bulletin, in fact, as opposed to more of a, ad-driven type of thing. You can see there were some ads in there, but they're all the way down at the bottom and they don't ruin the content. That's what I really like about it. When you get too many ads, you ruin the content. So I think it's a perfect balance of all of it. And I really enjoy it. And I screenshot them, I save them, I categorize them. I actually have a file in my email that I put all the news technical bulletins into. And then when I need them, I've got them at my fingertips with via email. Let's see. We do have one question here. What's the best way to open a broken deadbolt latch? So Peter, I'm going to try and debunk this as best I can. I'm guessing if you have a broken deadbolt latch, so your key would go in, Quickset's fairly notorious for it, where the clip falls out, the tailpiece falls out, something happens, and the key spins round and round, or the key works, but it doesn't actually open the lock. At that point in time, we're probably going to have to get destructive. You have a failed lock. My go-to would probably be to drill the 2 screws out of it, depending on what lock it is, and get the deadbolt out of the way, address the problem, use tools, screwdrivers, whatever it takes to get to that deadbolt latch, get it retracted, get it out of the way, get it off of there, and at that point, you're probably selling a new deadbolt. What are your feelings, Kelvin?
Yeah, so one of the things you could do is try to go through another door. Sometimes we overlook the obvious, and then maybe another door you can go through and then come on the inside and just take it apart. So if that's not the case, I agree with you, Wayne. We have to destroy it. I mean, we don't like to destroy things, but if there's no other way, you basically have to drill it out, drill the screws out, or some sort of way get to the latch, because it may not be the deadbolt that's actually failing. It may just be the key way, kind of like you said, the clip coming off the retainer and it's just kind of spinning around, but the deadbolt itself may still be working. But In a lot of cases, my last resort is always to destroy stuff, but given time, effort, where you are, what time of the day it is, you have to make those educated decisions and say, wait a minute, it's midnight. I'm in a rough neighborhood. People looking over my shoulder. This guy's got to be somewhere in 5 minutes. So you go to the obvious way, which is basically destroy it if you can't pick it or any other way. But you have to sometimes make those, kind of like we were talking in one of our last meetings, when people call you for these U-Haul locks, these padlocks. Sometimes you spend all this time picking it, where we just take a die grinder and cut the thing off.
That's it.
Especially if you got 50 of them or 20 of them, you're not going to spend your time picking the lock all day. And sometimes we get into this pride thing where we feel like, I got to pick this lock. No, cut them and get rid of it. Get your money and get out of there. Sometimes we have a lot of time constraints.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. So that seems to be all the questions we have. Does anybody else? We'll leave it open for just another minute here. And while we're doing that, do you have any last words? Anything else? How much is it to join LSA? And what's the best way to get in touch with you or anybody? If somebody wants to become a member, what is the path of least resistance to do so?
Yeah, so the membership is $60 a year. And John could probably ask this a lot better as far as the best way to get membership. I know we normally just kind of send the applications out. I'm not sure if there's a way that you can do it online, but John could probably answer that better. I know someone was mentioning about how I mentioned a lot of the bad areas. And it's not that I go in a lot of bad areas. I have to tell you these stories so you will be aware. And you may not think your area is bad, but sometimes things happen in the better areas. And I'm not saying I go to a lot of bad area jobs, but I'm just letting you know that you have to be aware. And some jobs you either have to be prepared to do whatever you need to do. And like Wayne said, a gun doesn't guarantee you're going to be safe. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that don't let your guard down, because we as locksmiths, most of the times we're called for emergency situations where there may be a domestic violence situation. It may be some sort of way where something's there. In other words, the customer's not telling you the whole story. So you have to be able to decipher what they're really saying. And I mention that because many times we don't get those jobs until we're desperate. Sometimes jobs come at the wrong time, but we're to a point where things are slow and I'll take on this job, that kind of thing. So I know someone did mention about that in the comments about you seem to be in a lot of bad areas. No, that's not the case at all. Most of my areas are pretty straightforward because I've got longtime customers and they tell me what's going on. If it is a situation, they'll make me aware of it. And that's about relationships. We can talk about that for hours, about relationships with customers, letting you know what's going on before you get there. Kind of a heads up.
Yeah. No, that's great. John, do you have anything to add to that to finish this off?
The short answer of getting a hold of LSA, if you think that you're even potentially interested, just grab one of those application forms on any one of the newsletters at lsamichigan.org and send it in. If not, I think our phone numbers are scattered throughout the website. And if not, you can always catch Calvin, myself, or if you know of any other LSA members, you're always welcome to email any one of us at any time and we will respond to you.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. One question down here, how easy is it to get distributors to send people to the association meetings to educate on new products? That's going to be a pretty big expense. As somebody who literally does that, I literally fly around the country and I'll be in Florida at the end of this month, and then I'll be in California 2 days later. So I'll literally be across the entire country in the scope of about 3 days for teaching and for ALOA duties and all kinds of other things. They're not going to pay the expenses. Travel is so expensive. It is literally like $1,200 for plane tickets now, $800. It's crazy. And then hotel is going to be $300 or $400. I mean, it's going to cost $2,000, $3,000 to send somebody out to do that. So that is why taking advantage of the webinars and the Zoom products that we have, then we can say, hey, whatever supplier company or whatever manufacturer, send us some product out. And I'll demo it, I'll review it, I'll put together some information on it, and then we'll provide that to the students. Like here, this is the exact same scenario that we do, and I do it all the time. We do it with frame and manufacturing. We do it with a lot of other people. I was actually one of the first people to beta test the leashy tools and give them feedback. I was one of the first people in the country to even have one to play with. And just making, I do that personally, and I try and share that as much as I can with the community, and we'll be doing so even more so with this new platform. So I hope that answers everybody's questions. John, thank you so much. Kelvin, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate all the people that took time out of their day to join this particular seminar and to show that support. And Kelvin, really nothing but support for LSA and what you guys do. I really believe in it. And I only support things that meet my own requirements and my beliefs as well to continue to better the trade and industry. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. And hopefully someone learned something from this. And I'm an open book, so you can get in touch with me anytime. I'll leave my business card on there if you want to get in touch with me through email or text or however you want to do it. But I'm all about helping the locksmith. That's my whole goal. And I know we get different comments saying, I don't want to spend this money on that tool and that tool, but do whatever makes you happy. That's all I can say. All I know is certain tools have made me plenty of money and they work and I use them and I don't get paid anything off of them. I like to advocate things that works for the industry.
Here's my philosophy. I'll add one little cherry on top to that. Anytime our industry puts together such high quality tools for the most part, I will intentionally buy a new product or tool that if I think it has the slightest chance of helping me, and I will try it. And if it works and it saves me time and money and makes money and I can get return on investment, I will keep it. If I don't personally bond with it and like it, I will then sell it. And it's surprising, they do not lose their value that much in this community. You can sell that thing on ClearStar or anywhere where there's a locksmith auction house. I really hope that people aren't just putting them up on eBay or Facebook for general public to consume. But if you put it through one of those other avenues, the chances of you retaining 70 to 80% of that original investment are extremely high. All you did was gain some knowledge, education, and the ability to interact with another tool to decide whether or not that's a good investment for your company or not. And there's so little risk involved because you can resell it and somebody else will find it useful that there's really not a lot of risk at all at it. So I'd invite people to open their minds to that concept.
Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, hopefully someone learned something from this and can always review this and look at it again.
All righty. Thanks for being a good sport today. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate all your information and all you do as well. And from one person who helps out a board and understands how much behind the scenes there is, we appreciate you and everything you and John do. So have a great day. We'll see everybody next week, Monday